Have you ever felt unconfident in a new or challenging situation? Find out exactly what to do the next time it happens in today's Innovator interview with Tara Gentilly. Welcome to Lipstick Unplugged. I'm your host, Dee Copeland Patience, and this is the no-gloss business branding show for women that gives them the confidence, mentoring, and resources that they need to change their lives in the world through entrepreneurship. So today I'm pretty excited. We have Tara Gentilly, who is a business coach and author, and she helps brands make a big impact with less effort. And in this interview, we got to talk about the fact that she's an introvert and how she puts on her uniform, the uniform of Tara, and how that helps her give her 110% of herself to the world. She talks about what that means and how you might be able to do it. Now, she also talks about why she does not respond to blog comments and instead uses Twitter to build relationships and trust with her audience. And she also she kept mentioning in this interview something that happened 4 years ago that helped her become a lot more happy and fulfilled in her life. So we talked about what that was, and I was just very surprised by it. I wasn't expecting it, and I think you're going to enjoy this one. So I hope you enjoy it. Sit back, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, so today we have on the show Tara Gentilly, who I'm really excited about. She helps passionate business owners like me and you make products and be profitable. And Tara has two really cool books. One is The Art of Earning, the other is The Art of Growth. And she's just doing all sorts of cool stuff that I definitely want to hear about. So Tara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Tara, I first heard about you. I first heard your interview on Blogcast FM. It might have been the one from 2010. And I listened and I've just kind of followed a lot of your interviews. And I'm just one of the sites and the people when I was building my show that I thought about. There was Marie Forleo, Danielle Laporte, and you.
Thank you.
And the reason
I'm always so thrilled when I'm in that kind of company.
It's because y'all are I'm a left-brained introvert, and I was trying to find my way online because I really just wanted to build a business. And when I started my adventure, I was looking for people like you, different business coaches, and people just with personality just oozing out of their pores. And so I wanted to know, we're going to talk about your background because I really want to get that and kind of where you're from. I love knowing what people were like when they grew up, because I kind of have I have this imaginable Tara that's in my mind that I think I know what you were like as a kid. I hope my daughter's like that. But then, it's also that, have you developed who you are over time, or have you always kind of been the Tara that we know of now?
Yeah. Well, great question. And I dig that you're interested in that as well. I also think that that's an interesting thing to know about people. I would say that for myself, when I'm at my best, I'm very consistent. I have been the, precocious 6-year-old. I have been the precocious 12-year-old. I have been the precocious 18-year-old. I have been the precocious 25-year-old. When I'm at my best, I'm very consistent. I think what some people know about me and what some people don't know about me is that I have suffered through chronic depression all of my life. So from the time I was about 10 years on forward, there were times in my life where I was very much like what you see on the internet, in the interviews, like we are right now. But then there have also been times where I've been lonely and sad and hopeless and angry. And I don't think that that's unique, certainly, but I do think that it is real. And I think it's helpful to hear sometimes too. So my upbringing has been, or my growth from child to now has been very consistent, but with these little bumps all along the way. That said, in the last 4 years since I've started my business, I've been the most consistent and feeling the most self-actualized. Like, this is who that little precocious 6-year-old, precocious 12-year-old that's who she was becoming. I am who I was becoming then. And so I do think it was a very consistent, a consistent growth pattern.
And see, that's amazing. I love that you shared that. I'm finding that more and more women are sharing that, we're not always these happy, bubbly beings. Because when I watch Marie Forleo, and she's always just, wow, this Marie Forleo. One of the reasons I wanted to do the show is to be honest and have that no gloss. I call it that no gloss about this too. Because to me, it's so lonely growing this online business. And that's something even Pat Flynn, he blogged about and talked about on his podcast, is I've always felt alone in the world and kind of like to myself, and that I didn't fit in anywhere. And so when you talked about in one of your interviews, I mentioned one of your interviews earlier, you said to be 110% of yourself. And I love that. And I thought, well, what is 110% of myself? Do you pick and choose what you want to be, or how do you choose that 110%, the best part of you? How did you choose that?
Yeah, so specifically that 110% idea is one of my philosophies on branding. So it's not that you have to show up as 110% of yourself every moment of every day. Oh my gosh, that would be exhausting. But when it comes to my brand, and specifically, thinking of myself as an individual strategist or an individual author, so maybe not so much, me as a entrepreneur or me as a business owner, but literally who I show up as when I'm talking to people like you, or when I'm talking to potential clients, or when I'm, hobnobbing at a conference or something like that. That's when I choose to show up as the 110% version of me. For me, yeah, I think it's totally up to you. You get to pick which of those characteristics of yourself you have the most fun with, and the ones that seem to be easiest for you to exaggerate. So for me, it's being super straightforward, being a bit of a geek, a bit of an intellectual. It's about being a little funky at the same time, and wanting, having that. I've always had a deep desire, or a longing to be that college professor that everyone wants to hang out with. Like that. That's who I wanted to be when I grew up, right? And so I've created that for myself. I've taken those characteristics of things that I think, okay, that is who typifies this person, this character that I want actualize, and then that's what I've turned into my personal brand. And so for me, while my brand is very sincere and honest to who I am and easy for me to put on, it's still kind of like a character that I put on. It's still like a hat and a costume and a set of ideas that I step into. And that helps me deal with my own personal shyness and introversion. And, it gives me that lens to focus my energy through, so that I am really making a bigger impact in the way that I show up, so that I'm memorable, so that, you are almost immediately have a story in your head about who I am and what I stand for. And I think that helps then to attract the right kind of people to my business, and it helps me make a much deeper connection with those right kind of people for my business. You do get that sense that I get it. I hope, I think, this is what I'm told. You get that sense that I get it. I get her. If you're the right person for me. And so then we have these characteristics and these truths that we can communicate on that with that as the foundation. And that allows me to have a brand then that really works for my business and not against it.
Well, then tell me how you got started then, not in terms of in terms of your brand from I think you had Scouty Girl. And so I don't know if it started there, but over time, I know that as I've been finding my voice and figure, it's almost like it's a process, and I have some clear idea of how I developed it. But do you have a process that you take your clients through, or for the woman who's listening to us, if she says, well, I have no idea, I just got started, where do you suggest that maybe she start?
Great question. So I totally agree. Growth, whether it's branding or product development or customer development, it's a process. It's not an epiphany. We wait and wait and wait and wait for that light bulb moment to really put it all out there, to do something big or, take a big risk. And that's really not helpful. I think for the thing that I like to tell people who are just starting off is that just starting off is a huge asset, because it means you have room to make all sorts of mistakes that you don't have room to make when you get more successful. When I first started my business, all I did was put out a single, very small idea, and I let it mature, I nurtured it, and I listened and observed a lot. And I looked for the ways that brand was working and the ways it wasn't working. And then I was looking for the services that were working and the services that weren't working. And I tried, I don't know how many different things in the first year, maybe 14 months of my business. Tried so many different things. And I just kept sticking with the things that worked. And then as that went on, I could take those things further. Always stick with the things that work. If you find something that works, look for the next step. What's the next step of that thing that's working? Okay. And so that gives you a path then for that iteration and the actualization of what will be a business that really works for you. So it's just that step by step by step, that iterative process of discovering little bit by little bit what's really going to work. The brand that you start off with today, or the product that you start off with today, or the service that you start off with today, you can just trust it's not going to look the same in a year. It's not going to look the same in 6 months. So don't allow anything to be too precious. Artists have the same problem, right? Every little thing is so precious. Yeah. And that's understandable. But you got to try and avoid that. Avoid the overcommitment to one idea and just allow it to kind of take its own shape as you move forward.
And you know what was cool is in your conversation with Srini on your Blogcast FM, you talked about this a little bit, and what y'all said that I thought was just awesome was you said, you have to start going out and talking to people, like real people, and going to conferences. And you talked about a conference that maybe wasn't you, that you didn't like, and then the ones that really energized you. So can you talk more about what you've learned, kind of those lessons, maybe even some mistakes that you made when you were trying to connect with people just to get these ideas out of your head?
Yeah, good question. So first, you mentioned earlier that this kind of online entrepreneurship is a very lonely place. And I agree with that, but at the same time, I think a lot of that loneliness is very self-imposed. People keep themselves in their little home offices or at their kitchen tables because they're afraid that when they go out into the world, they're not going to have the goods. They're not going to have that veil that they keep in front of themselves online that allows them to be the expert, the authority, the idea person. And the truth is, maybe some of that's a little true, but most of it is just your imposter complex. My friend Tanya Geisler speaks about imposter complex so well. Most of it's just your imposter complex. It's you telling yourself that you're not good enough when you have no proof to that point. So getting out from that home office is hugely important. You have to break through that fear and go out and meet people. I can't say that there's any specific mistakes I've made in getting out of the office and getting out from behind the computer and meeting people. I really think it's one of those things where if you allow the opportunity to make itself known to you, there's an opportunity to learn in every single interaction you have. That doesn't mean I say yes to every conference. It doesn't mean I say yes to every coffee date. It doesn't mean I say yes to even every Skype meeting. But it does mean that, even if the person I'm talking to isn't a potential client, even if they're not a potential mover and shaker, it doesn't matter. There's always something to learn. And so if you allow yourself to have a genuine curiosity for the people that you're getting out and meeting, that curiosity will drive you to new insights about yourself, your business, and your customers.
Well, that's awesome. And I hope that I'm in the movers and the shakers category. That's why you said yes.
Definitely.
So, you know what I thought was interesting was the way that you use Twitter. Also, in the conversation that you had with Serini, you talked about how you have your blog, right? And that's I'm helping women build their online platform. That's what I really know is just critically important. I'm glad it has a word now, you know. But there, you have your blog, and you mentioned something interesting, which is that you didn't necessarily you didn't like interacting on your blog as much as on Twitter because that's a longer conversation. I don't know if you remember that. But could you talk to us more about how you use Twitter to kind of grow your following and really make connections with people?
Yeah. Well, first, I think there are so many shoulds out there. And one of the shoulds that people espouse is that you really should be replying to every comment that's on your blog. And there have been different times where I've tried that and not, and then a month later, I'm like, I can't keep this up. I think really what you should be doing is choosing to have conversations where the people that you want to serve are at. And so the people that I want to serve read my blog all sorts of different places. Lots of them read it in their email boxes. Lots of them come from Facebook. Lots of them come from Twitter. And not a lot of people are just hanging out on my website. It'd be kind of weird if they were just hanging out on my website. I don't want them hanging out on my website. I want them to read my information and then go do something about it. And one place they go do something about it is actually on Twitter. I'm not a social media strategist. I don't give social media advice, but I give a lot of advice that can be implemented through social media. And so Twitter is one place. I love it. They love it. Why not have the conversation there? So one strategy that I use for Twitter that I think not nearly enough people are using is that Twitter is a great place to listen. The conversation there happens so fast that you can pull in a lot of information very quickly. And you can pull in a lot of very good information if you learn how to organize Twitter. So if you create lists that actually work for you, so you're not just looking at your mainstream, which is generally full of junk. So, have a list, have a private Twitter list that's all, potential ideal clients, people you would just love to serve that you really feel you could make a difference for. Put them all in a list. Put a list of industry professionals all in, put them all in a Twitter list. Have a list of just your tribe, the people that they're really your close colleagues, the people that you're working with and depending on a daily basis. Those are three of my big Twitter list suggestions. Then if you use like a client like Hootsuite, you can line those suckers up and just pay attention to that Twitter content, and you'll see trends, conversations, questions, ideas emerge and change and shape. And you don't even have to put a lot out to get a lot out of Twitter. You can reap a lot of value from that information without having to put a lot of energy into it once it's set up. Then you can go about injecting yourself into those conversations and ideas and trends in a way that is much more impactful for your business, and doesn't involve you spending hours and hours and hours on Twitter, which is what I don't recommend.
You can easily do that. I love Hootsuite. That's what I use. And it's just a great way to also hear about other people in that same space. It's just amazing. And I hated Twitter until I learned about lists. And lists saved my life. So then what's your goal with Twitter? Is it to, when you're looking at Twitter and you're trying to connect with someone, I know that, it's not like you're trying to connect with someone just to, have as a client, but overall, is it to grow your audience? Is it to get more clients? Is it to get your name out there? What's your big Twitter strategy then overall? Like, what's your goal of using it?
My goal is simply to be present. And in being present, I have the opportunity to do so many things. I have the opportunity to change conversations. I have the opportunity to answer questions. I have the opportunity to get some traffic for my blog. I have the opportunity to meet new people, to create relationships with people who I could never have had relationships with in the past. People who are world-renowned economists and, professors at Harvard Business School, people like that who I would have had no way to connect with before. I don't use Twitter for any one particular strategy. I can't say that I have a particular goal in being there. My only goal is simply to be present and to act accordingly.
And I love that. And one of the questions that you asked today is because I love stories. I was telling people, I worked at Apple, and of course, Apple, Steve Jobs is just known for stories. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions that you asked, you were talking about crafting stories instead of like sales pitches. Mm-hmm. So I was intrigued by that question. I wanted to know why you're obviously thinking about it. So I wanted to know, well, what were you thinking about and why did that come up today?
Yeah, so I actually had an editorial meeting with my assistant editor at Scouty Girl yesterday, and I said, I'm just so tired of the amount of navel gazing that is on the web. And that I think, Scouty Girl has always been a place where we've been future focused with content. And I think one of the ways we can lead again is by having the opportunity, taking the opportunity to show instead of tell. There's so much telling and so very little showing in the blog space. And that it does not matter what industry you are in, whether you're in social media or whether you're in Silicon Valley tech or whether you're in mommy blogs, whatever. There's so much telling and so very little showing. And when I think about my favorite magazines, when I think about my favorite memoirs, when I think about my favorite television programs, the ones that touch me and change me the most are the ones that are really concerned with story. And are there lessons in those stories? Are there realizations in those stories? Yes. But does it always have to be put in the form of advice? Does it always have to be a how-to? Does it always have to be a 1, 2, 3?
Oh,
I don't think that it does not. So what if we concentrate more on sharing what's honest to us and what's sincere and focus less on the formula? I don't think that you need that advice formula to be relevant and interesting and even transformational. I don't think most people make big personal transformations based on how-to advice. I think they make it based on connecting with real people and real stories.
That is awesome.
That's what I'm thinking about right now.
That's great, because that's one of the things I noticed is because people say be creative, but then, here's the formula for creativity. It's the top 21 things, and it's, these certain types of posts. And I thought that is so boring. And I actually got a little depressed yesterday because I'd started thinking about how boring blogging is and how boring it is online because there's so many people saying the same things. And I told my husband, doesn't anyone have anything to say? Besides the same posts and the same boring stuff, what about who you are? And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you, is because I didn't want a whole bunch of tactics. And I know there's a lot of stuff in your head that's really cool, but I really wanted my audience to have access, just the world to have more access to you and just the way you think. You know what I mean? It's just the way your mind works. And so I wanted to just talk about, in the last couple questions, I always want like an hour. But I wanted to go back to your story about when you talked about being depressed all the time too. And I feel like I'm always depressed. I'm always feeling like I'm never doing anything good enough. And I hear the same thing from other women all the time. They're always just kind of beating themselves up. So I wanted to know more about how then are you handling that? Like you put on this hat that's Tara, but what about the non-Tara times? What do you do to handle that when you're not in that spotlight?
Well, I have to say, like I said, the last 4 years have been the most self-actualized, consistent, joyful years of my life, really. And so when I take off the hat that's the connector and the showman and the that when I take off character, what's left is really not that different. I would say the character is less about putting on something consistent and more about a coping mechanism for me as an introvert. So, and seriously, and I find in talking to other introverts who are very successful, they do very much the same thing. You kind of have this moment where you go, and then you're ready, and you can expend that energy that you're unable to expend, or that doesn't feel as good when it's not necessary. And so that's all it really is to me. On a day-to-day basis, I love my life. I am a happy person. Sure, there are times when, it's not all sparkles and unicorns. But I think, creating something and exploring new areas, challenging myself, these are the things that keep me happy. And I've created a life where that is my everyday pursuit. My everyday pursuit is being curious and challenging myself and exploring new territories. And oh my gosh, like what more could I possibly want? So even when I don't have that, really what I think of as almost a performance hat on, it's fine. It's just maybe a little more toned down. It's sometimes it's a little more shy, for sure. But it's very consistent. So I don't want to give anyone the impression that when, if you meet me at a conference or if you meet me even for coffee, that's not the real person that you're meeting. You're definitely meeting me. It's just a way that I kind of direct energy that serves me. And I think it serves the people that I'm talking to as well. You don't want to talk to the introverted me. You want to talk to the me that can actually relate to you on some level.
Well, I think you just help like millions of us extroverts and introverts out there, because it's like, I feel the same way. And one of the things I was telling someone, I told my husband that I have my headphones that I put on and I have this mic and it's very visible, and everyone else has their cool iPhone, headphones that fall out of my ear. And I told him it's almost like that's my protective, I feel like my guest is in my ear. It makes me feel comfortable. And I put on Dee, the interview person who's not afraid of talking to someone, and that's kind of the same way.
Yeah, it is exactly the same thing. My only suggestion to you is to make sure that then when you go out into the world, you have something else, whether it is just a mental, like a mindset that you put on, or whether it's something physical. Like I have like a collection of blazers that they go to conferences with me because it's a visible reminder of, okay, it's go time, right? So what's your go time thing going to be when you get out from behind the mic? I think that's just the only, it's exactly the same. Just, what are you going to do about that?
I think that's awesome. I'm going to have a power blazer.
There you go.
So I want to get more to here as we wrap up to your business, what you're doing now. I kind of, in the back of my mind, you keep bringing up that 4 years ago is when all this stuff started. So part of me is like, I can't wrap up without asking, well, what happened 4 years ago that now you're not in that depression mode? Like, was there some magical moment there with your business? Or, just one day you woke up and you're like, I'm happy, but what happened 4 years ago?
Good question. So 2 magical moments. The first was, I gave birth to my daughter, who's now 4.5.
Oh.
And she, that whole experience, well, gosh, it's a really long story, but essentially I interviewed for a promotion at the job I had been working for while I was 9 months pregnant. And surprise, surprise, I didn't get that promotion. Wonder why. Anyhow.
And you're not bitter.
Oh, I'm not bitter. No, it doesn't matter. They're not in business anymore. So I went home after I decided that. I allowed myself to be angry for maybe 12 hours. When I woke up the next day, I said, that's it. I don't need them. What have they done for me? What has anyone done for me? And more importantly, what have I done for myself over the last, 5 to 10 years? And the answer was not much. And so I decided, dude, you've got skills, you've got talents, and you're incredibly persuasive. We can do things with this, right? So the week before I gave birth, I wrote down a list of all the skills that I had, all the places I'd like to work for, all the things that I could do for them. And I thought, I can make, other people make it work as a freelancer. I will make it work as a freelancer. I gave birth, decided I was never going back to that old job, and that I would just stick out, what few benefits I had, I'd stick those out, and then I'd see what would happen. In the fall then, so a couple months later, I started, just kind of diving into all that the internet had created in the time since I was out of college and, doing these things. Like I started blogging 10 years ago, but I didn't keep up with it, unfortunately. So I was, investigating all these things and all the possibilities. And then, so 6 months after the birth of my daughter, I started my first website, and the rest is history, I guess. But those were the two catalyzing experiences: becoming a mother and starting my business. And starting my business was huge because it was an opportunity to see something that I could bring into creation again. So, much like giving birth is bringing something into creation, building a business is the same. You are bringing something into creation, and there are very few things that will give you that kind of high, I think, as to really manifesting something that's been in your mind that's just an idea and putting it out there for other people to use.
Absolutely. And I tell you, in both, there were a lot of tears for me starting this business. When I had an idea and it didn't seem like it worked out, I spent forever, lots of tears. And then being a mom is just, it's just amazing. And, and that's a whole nother level right there.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
Then tell us then about what your business is now. And I talk about bold goals, so a way that we're challenging ourselves and always kind of being in that space where we're not getting stagnant. What's your bold goals for the next year? What's something you're working on, things that you're doing that you're excited about?
Yeah, so my business now is in multiple different parts. I spent the last year basically creating a bucket. I call them buckets for a specific part of my business, a specific need, and creating an independent entity out of that. And so that is Kickstart Labs. And one of my big goals, my bold goals for this year, is to really, really kind of give it the shove out the door in terms of, okay, it's time for you to provide for yourself now, right? And make sure it's mature, make sure it's independent, make sure it is able to provide for itself. And so that's definitely one of the bold goals. I need to, take a back seat there and, still continue directing it and managing it, but allow it to move in its own direction. And then a bold goal that I have been working on now for 6 to 10 months is getting a book published. And I think that will be traditionally published. So I think that will continue to be on the docket for this year. And if not, I'm very happy to continue publishing smaller books through all the wonderful ways that we have to do that now. And I find that to be exciting. I find that to work really well with my creative style, and I find it to be very helpful to my audience as well. It's much easier for them to read a 15,000 word, mini book than it is for them to read a 300-page big business book that's got lots of junk in it they don't need. So that's kind of my those would be my big goals for this year.
Very cool. So is there any if there's anything else you want to talk about that's coming up, any workshop, etc., you can do that. And then I just wanted to wrap up with where we can find you online. We already kind of know Twitter, but if there's any other place that you want to mention that we can kind of hook up with you.
Sure. So, taragentilly.com is my website. And if you're especially interested in the art of growth, which is my new book on maximizing your impact while minimizing your effort in your business, which is something I think we all need to be doing, you can go to taragentilly.com/art of growth. And you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Tara Gentilly. And you can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/tara.gentilly. That's the crux of it.
All right. Well, this was awesome, right? I hope you had fun. I know that I did. And I just wanted to thank you so much for your time. We're going to watch out for your future book that I know is going to be coming. And I'll definitely just keep in touch on Twitter. Definitely.
For sure. Thank you so much.
All right. That's it for today's Innovator interview. I hope you enjoyed the show. For more inspiring mentor interviews, the show notes, and your Rebel Action worksheet, visit lipstickunplug.com.